Hey, welcome to Grafana for Beginners. I'm Lisa Jung, and I'm a developer advocate at Grafana. In the last episode, we learned about the most commonly used visualizations in Grafana. In this episode, we'll create 5 of these commonly used visualizations and become familiar with creating visualization panels. This is a dashboard we'll be creating today. The dashboard consists of visualizations of logs, metrics, and traces from an e-commerce app. This app has a microservices architecture and it's running on Kubernetes. In episode 7, we covered a brief background about this app and we explored the data collected from this app as well. If you need a refresher, click on the info card up top to watch this episode. When building a dashboard, having a clear idea of who the audience is helps us determine what data we choose to show and how we visualize that data. In our case, we're building a dashboard for SREs who are observing our system. This dashboard will help them understand the infrastructure the app is running in. We'll create visualizations that keep track of the number of running Kubernetes nodes, the amount of CPU activity per node, the number of containers, the rate, errors, and duration metrics for apps on our cluster, and logs with errors. This is not by any means a comprehensive dashboard with all the info that an SRE might need. The core point of this episode is to become familiar with dashboard tools and create your first visualization panels. So we'll be creating the simplest visualizations that don't involve complex queries or knowledge of advanced concepts. Let's start with creating a dashboard. From the homepage of Grafana Cloud or Grafana in your local environment, expand the menu and click on the Dashboards option. Click on the New button and select the New Dashboard option from the drop-down menu. Then click on the Add Visualization option. It'll prompt you to select the source of data you want to visualize. The first 3 panels show the visualization of metrics data that helps us understand the infrastructure the app is running in. These provide information regarding nodes and containers. Our metrics data is stored in a Mimir data source connection named Grafana Cloud-microbes Lisa Jung-prom. So we'll select that. Mimir is like an enterprise grade of Prometheus, so it's shown as Prometheus in Grafana. Now, when you select your data source, it'll immediately take you to the panel editor. This is where you can create and customize a visualization panel in a dashboard. Think of each box here as panels. Each panel contains a visualization of factors that you want to observe. The query section is where you write queries to retrieve the data you want to visualize. The options section is where you can customize how you want to visualize that data. The visualization section displays a visualization you're creating in real time. The first visualization we'll create is a gauge visualization type. We'll use this to show the number of running Kubernetes nodes. The gauge visualization shows you the numeric value of whatever you're observing and where it lies within the range you specify. These are especially useful when you're monitoring something that you want to stay within a certain range. In this case, we're showing how many nodes we have in total and how many are actually running. Let's go back to the panel editor and look at the query section. In order to create a visualization, we first need to write a query to retrieve the data we want to visualize. Before writing a query, make sure the correct data source is selected. Earlier, we selected the Mimir data connection that contains metrics data about the nodes. Next, we'll use a code view to write a query, so click on that option. This is where we'll enter a PromQL query that will retrieve the number of running Kubernetes nodes. In this series, we're assuming that you're familiar with the query language of your data source and how your data is structured. So we'll go over the queries at a high level. This is a PromQL query here that counts the number of nodes in a cluster. It's doing that by getting the sum of the nodes in the cluster. So let's see if this query works by running the query here. Now, if you look at the visualization section, it'll visualize the data as a time series line graph by default. Looks like there are 3 nodes running in the cluster over time, but this isn't the visualization type we want. We want to visualize this as a gauge. To customize a visualization, we'll use the options section here. Up top is a drop-down menu with all the visualization types that could be created within Grafana. From here, we'll select the gauge visualization. The visualization type should update to a gauge with number 3 in the center. This means that there are 3 nodes that are currently running in a cluster. Now, if you look at the options section on the right, it lists all the ways in which a gauge visualization could be customized. Now, all visualization types in Grafana could be customized using the options section. For time's sake, we won't go over every option available, but I do want you to bookmark this documentation here. Now, the link is also included in the info card up top as well as in the description. This documentation lists all the visualization type you can create with Grafana. When you click on the desired visualization, it'll take you to a page that explains all the options you can use to customize that visualization. So when you're doing this on your own and come across an option that's not covered in the series, you can always use this doc to learn more about it. So let's get back to the options section of the gauge visualization. Before we customize anything, it's important to give your panel a title so the viewers know exactly what they're looking at. Under the title section, we'll give it a title of number of running Kubernetes nodes. When you click anywhere on the dashboard, you'll see that the panel title is automatically updated in the visualization section. Another thing you may want to fill out is the description. The chances are you're working with multiple team members who will be observing the system. Not everyone will be familiar with all the factors you're observing and may need more context. This is where you can add the context for your teammates. The gauge visualization type shows you the numeric value of whatever you're observing and where it lies within the range you specify. These are especially useful when you're monitoring something that you want to stay within a certain range. Right now, we have the number of nodes running, but we have not specified a range. We're going to do that by going to the options section and scrolling down to the standard options section. Let's say we have 4 nodes in our cluster, so the minimum number of nodes we could have is 0, and the max is 4. So we'll specify that under the min and max here. Now when you do so, you'll see the gauge reflect that there are 3 nodes that are currently running, and that's not the maximum number of nodes we have. Now let's add more context here to make this visualization even more helpful. We have a side-by-side view of the visualization we just created and the final visualization we're working towards. Our final visualization has a number of nodes shown, whereas the current does not. Now we also see this outer band on the current visualization, but the final one doesn't have this. To make these changes, we're going to scroll up to the gauge section. We're going to toggle on the show threshold labels. This will show the thresholds we set. So far, we have the minimum and the maximum value set as thresholds, so our visualization will reflect that. Next, we'll toggle off the show threshold markers. This will get rid of this outer band here, which we don't need. So let's take a look at the current and the final panels again. The current one is green, whereas the final one is yellow. The colors are a powerful way to alert the viewer whether something needs our attention or not. With Grafana, you can configure thresholds for your panels, so if whatever you're observing hits a certain threshold, the info is displayed in certain colors. Let's apply that to the gauge visualization. Earlier, we mentioned that we have 4 nodes in our cluster. In a hypothetical scenario, let's say we want all 4 nodes running for optimal performance. If we have 3 running, it's less than ideal, but things still function. But it warrants us to look at what's going on and decide on the next steps. Now, if we have 2 or fewer running, then things start falling apart. We need someone on this now and address this right away. To help our team members understand this at a glance, we're going to color code the thresholds. To make that happen, scroll down to the standard option section. From there, make sure the color scheme is selected to from thresholds by value option. Then scroll down to the threshold section. You'll see the green dot here with the word base next to it. This makes the color of the gauge green by default. When you click on the green dot, it'll show you the color menu. When you select the text color option here, it will turn the base color to gray. Now, I like using the colors of the traffic lights to signify whether something needs our attention or not. I will use the color green to signify something is in the optimal range. Yellow when things are not at an optimal level and someone should take a look at what's going on. And red when we're in trouble. Something must be addressed right away. Now I'm going to use the threshold section to accomplish this. I want the gauge to turn green if we have 4 running nodes. I'm going to change this threshold to 4 and change the color to green. In order to do so, click on the number. You can type any number you want. Replace the number 80 with 4. Then click on the red dot to get the pop-up menu. Then select the green color. This tells Grafana to change the color of the gauge to green if there are 4 nodes running. Next, we want to add another threshold. When the number of running nodes is 3, I want the gauge to turn yellow to let someone know to look into this. So we're going to select the Add Threshold option. Just like we did last time, we'll type in the number 3 and select the yellow color. You'll see that the color of the gauge immediately turns to yellow as the number of running nodes is 3. You'll also see the number 3 reflected on the gauge here. Following the same steps, we're going to add the thresholds of 0, 1, and 2 nodes. If the number of nodes is anywhere between 0 to 2, the gauge is going to turn red, signifying that this must be addressed right away. Now that our current and final panels are identical, we'll save this dashboard. You could do that by clicking on the Save button up top. Give the dashboard a descriptive name. Now, under the description, provide some context to what the dashboard is visualizing. Select the folder you wish to save this dashboard in, then click on the Save button. Then you should see the Save dashboard with the panel you just created. You can adjust the size of the panel by holding and dragging the lower right corner of the panel. You could also move the panel by holding and dragging the panel title. All right, next, we'll create a time series line graph. The graph type was chosen because we want to look at how the CPU activity of each node changes over time. It's great for detecting trends at a glance. To add another visualization, click on the Add button and select the visualization option. The first thing we're going to do is to make sure we have the right data source selected. We're using the same metrics data source we're using for the previous panel, so we're good to go. To create this, we'll write a PromQL query to retrieve the data we want to visualize. This query calculates the amount of CPU activity per Kubernetes node over time. In other words, how much workload each node is handling over time. This info is obtained by calculating the rate of this metric here, measuring CPU activity from each node. With the rate function, you must specify an interval in which that rate is calculated. We're using the rate interval variable here to tell Grafana, hey, I don't want to figure out this interval. Will you pick the appropriate interval for me? Next, we'll run the query by clicking on the Run Queries button. By default, it'll create a time series line graph, which is actually what we want to create. At the bottom, you'll see the legend, which shows each node in its respective colors. On the x-axis, it shows you the time. On the y-axis, it shows you the measurement of CPU activity. The panel should always have a descriptive title. We'll change the title to the amount of CPU activity per Kubernetes node. You can also include a description here to provide more context. The options section will allow you to customize the graph in many ways. Again, we'll go over a few to create the final visualization we want. For an explanation of options we don't go over, check out the documentation that I shared at the beginning of the episode. Let's say you wanted to customize how the legend is shown on the panel. If you toggle off the visibility option, you'll see that the legend is gone. I want the legend shown, so let's toggle it back on. You could also change the placement of the legend. Right now it's at the bottom, But by clicking on the right option here, you could move the legend to the right. I'm going to put the legend back to where it was by clicking on the bottom option, as I like the way that looks. Let's move on to the axis. Scroll down to the axis section. When it comes to the time series visualization, the time will be on the x-axis and it'll be in your local time zone by default. You could change the time zone by selecting an option from a drop-down menu. You could also change the placement of the y-axis, either on the left or the right side of the graph. You can even hide it by selecting one of the placement options here. For example, by selecting the right placement option, the y-axis values were moved to the right side of the graph. But I like the y-axis values on the left, so I'm going to return to the original placement. Next, let's scroll down to the graph style section. You could change the style of the time series visualization to lines, bars, or points by clicking on each option. Here is the same data shown in a time series bar chart. The same is shown in the points time series graph. The time series line graph helps me see the trend best, so I'm going to revert back to the original line graph. Now in the same section, you could change the line width. You could change the fill opacity to add color to the space under each line. You can also change the line style from solid to dash. But I actually like the graph created by default, so I return everything to the original setting. Last thing I'm going to show you is how to change the color of the graph. So scroll down to the standard options section, then down to the color scheme. Right now, it's set on the classic palette by default, but you could choose from any of these options to get the color you like. This is what it looks like when the color scheme is set to red, yellow, green by value, blue, purple by value. Again, I like the default color scheme of the classic palette that shows each node in a different color. So I returned it to the original setting. Once you finalize your panel, click on the Apply button. This will add the panel to the dashboard. By holding and dragging the panel title, I'm going to move the panel. I'm also going to adjust the size by holding and dragging the lower right corner to arrange the dashboard like this. Next, we'll create a stats visualization panel. We're interested in the real-time stats about the number of running Kubernetes containers. From the dashboard, click on the Add button, then select the visualization option. We're going to visualize the number of running containers. The data is contained in the same metrics data source we have been using. In the code view, we'll enter the PromQL query that counts the number of containers. It's doing that by getting the sum of the containers in the Kubernetes cluster. Let's see if this query works by running the query here. Now it'll show you a time series line graph by default. So let's change that by clicking on the visualization option, then selecting the stat option. You'll see this on the screen. By default, it shows you the most recent value of whatever data you have queried. It shows that there are 91 Kubernetes containers that are running right now, along with the spark line, which shows the trend of this data over time. What we're creating is a simple stats visualization that only shows the number of running Kubernetes containers. We'll start by changing the panel title to number of running Kubernetes containers. Now the spark line, the graph in the background, is used to show the trend of the data. For this dashboard though, I just want the number, so we'll remove the spark line. So scroll down to the stat style section. Under the graph mode, select the none option to get rid of the graph. Now this panel by default is showing the number in red. I want this number displayed for context only, so I'm going to keep this in a neutral color. So scroll down to the standard option section and click on the color scheme. Choose a single color option from the drop-down menu. It'll turn the color to gray. Let's save this panel by clicking on the Apply button. Next, we'll create a logs visualization to display logs with errors. This will help us to take a quick look at the log lines. We'll be able to see if this is an event we need to look further into. From the dashboard, click on the Add option, then click on the Visualization option. Since we're viewing logs, we need to select our logs data source. In my setup, the logs are stored in a Loki connection called Grafana Cloud Microbes Lisa Jung -logs. So we'll select that. To write the query, click on the code view. Then enter the logql query, which retrieves logs with errors. This query is saying to retrieve all logs from a Kubernetes app called e-commerce from the microbes cluster. These logs must contain one of the variations of these keywords, such as critical, error, exception, fail, or fatal. Then click on the visualization menu, then select the logs option, then click on the Run Query button. You'll see log lines that contain a variation of the keywords we've specified. These are highlighted in orange. Now let's zoom in on the log lines here. If you want more metadata about the log line you're interested in, you can click on the arrow to get more metadata here. Now the default visualization is exactly what we want, so we won't customize it any further. If you want to explore how else you can customize a log visualization, you can check out the doc I shared earlier. For our panel, we'll just add the panel title, Logs with Errors, and click on Apply to add the Logs panel to the dashboard. We'll resize and move the panel just as we've done before to arrange the panels as shown here. Last but not least, we'll create a node graph. This will help us visualize the state of all parts of our system and how these parts are connected to one another. We'll specifically display rate, errors, and duration metrics for apps on our Kubernetes cluster. From the dashboard, click on the Add button and select the Visualization option. In Grafana, node graphs are most commonly used to visualize trace data, and this is no exception. We'll start by selecting our trace data source. In my setup, traces are stored in a tempo data connection called Grafana Cloud-Microbes Lisa Jung-Traces. For node graphs, we don't need to write a query. Grafana automatically generates everything for you. From the query section, select the service graph option. Then click on the visualization drop-down menu and select the node graph visualization. What I've been encountering is that Grafana doesn't load the node graph until I change the time range. So I clicked on the time picker and selected for the last 24 hours. Then it generated the node graph. At first, I just saw a partial node graph, so I grabbed and dragged the visualization panel down. So this node graph shows the state of all parts of our system and how these parts are connected. You could see the services of our app represented as a circle. We see checkout, content, API gateway, etc., along with calculation of the rate, errors, and duration metrics. All of this is done automatically without configuring anything, as it's already in the trace data set we have. The node graph is attuned to that data source. So let's zoom in on the visualization by clicking on the plus sign. Each circle or service displays two numbers. The bottom number is the number of requests this service receives per second. This is also known as rate. The top number shows the amount of time those requests take. This is also known as duration. Together, these two numbers reflect the total traffic the service particularly deals with. Should the requests fail, the circle will turn red. This is known as errors. Now, you could also see the same metrics between two specific services. This is why the final node graph visualization is titled as Rate, Errors, and Duration Metrics for Apps on our Kubernetes cluster. So using the panel editor, we'll change the title as such, then click on the Apply button. All right, we just created the gauge, time series line graph, stats, logs, and node graph visualizations to observe our system. While we're observing our system, we'll come across some interesting events or patterns that we want to mark and discuss with our teammates. This is known as annotating events. In the next episode, we'll learn how to do that with Grafana. If you want to access more episodes of Grafana for Beginners series, go to the Grafana community webpage. This is where all the community resources are shared. You can access the series by clicking on the Grafana for Beginners card. Last but not least, if you want to delve deeper into any of these topics covered in the series, documentation is a great place to start. To access the documentation, scroll down on the page and click on the Docs card. On the Docs page, you can either search for the topic you want or look at the table of contents to see what is there to explore in Grafana. You can also click on the product name to delve further into that product. All right, that's a wrap. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.